So the story of Uncle Tungsten talks about the childhood of this very famous neurosurgeon named Oliver Sacks. Now, Oliver Sacks grew up in London, and in the story we talk about his chemical childhood, which he was introduced by his uncle, Uncle Tungsten, or Uncle Abe. So, and what I try to do in these videos is that I summarize most of the chapters in the book. Most of them actually talk about chemistry, but I will talk about his childhood that didn't have much chemistry about it as well. So, in this chapter, called The Land of Stibnite, talks about when little Oliver Sacks was a Cub Scout. Yeah. And he said that there was a lot of things he liked about it. He liked that everyone had matching uniforms and everything. But there was this one incident that he had to deal with. He had to make something called a damper. Now, a damper is like very, very hard bread, which has a bunch of flour that needs flour to make with some seasoning and everything. Now, one day, Oliver had to make one of these, but he noticed that there wasn't any more flour. So, instead of trying to buy any or ask if there was any more, he thought it would be a better idea if he took the cement outside. Now, as Oliver Sacks writes in his book, he doesn't remember what made the connection that cement was better than flour, but he used that anyway, and he was like, hey, what could go wrong? Except when someone actually saw it, they actually bit their tooth in it, and they cracked their tooth. And that's how he got kicked out of Cub Scouts. Now, that's basically most of the story about him being a Cub Scout. But they also talk about how he went to this museum and how he started getting interested in things that are called minerals. Now, minerals include several elements, but they are not pure. They are usually a mix of two or more elements. For example, these two, tantalum and niobium. Now, these two are named after two Greek people, one called Tantalus and the other called Niobe. And they're usually found together because Tantalus was the father and Niobe was the daughter. So they're typically found together. And these aren't usually the only ones. For example, tungsten and I believe molybdenum are also like that. And if you notice, if you look at in the periodic table, tantalum is right under niobium, and right next to them, tungsten is right under molybdenum. Now, the next chapter, instead of talking about how he was really interested in how these elements were staying together, and that's how most of the scientists figure out most of the new elements, called chemical reactions. Now, in chemical reactions, we start talking about how young Oliver Sacks was starting to get introduced by his family, such as his brothers trying to introduce him to chem, and even his parents, and that he would do small ones on the kitchen table. But it wasn't until Uncle Tungsten himself showed up that he really became interested in chemistry. Now, because of this made young Oliver want to have his own lab in his house. Not the kitchen table, nor sharing the same lab as Uncle Tungsten. He wanted his very own. And he wanted to do a lot of things in it. For example, with the elements that are stuck together in minerals, he wanted to do everything he could to them. He wanted to put acid in them, put them in water, see if he could separate them. Even though it was possible to buy these to partnership apart, he thought it would be more fun if he did it himself. Now, where would a small child like this actually get like all the chemicals or all the minerals? Well, he got it from this guy named Griffin. Now, Griffin was the shopkeeper where he bought chemicals from. And Griffin was a very nice person. He told young Oliver all the things he needed to know about chemistry. For example, he talked about most of the properties that a lot of the elements that are normally together, especially the metals, the transition metals, such as tungsten and tantalum and niobium, were usually found together in nature, and they were only found apart because scientists discovered that they were actually two separate elements. And I believe that is it for this video. Thank you for watching.